18 of the training. In this section, we'll be discussing the choppy market condition, and we'll learn exactly what choppy is, how to measure it, and how to use it to our advantage. First, let's start with the definition of choppy. Choppy condition is when the market lacks sufficient volatility or up and down movement to allow for a reasonable chance of taking a signal and capturing a 2-point profit objective. In previous lessons, we've touched. So let's go to a chart and go over completely exactly what we mean by choppy market condition. First, let's identify the sell signal that occurs on this chart at about 11:46 on our timeline. Remember from a previous lesson that before we take this signal, we must ask, is the signal against the trend? And then we must ask, is the signal choppy? Actually, it's quite easy to see that this signal is not against a trend because the market is just going sideways from what we can see. To answer the second question, though, we must take some measurements in order to determine whether the signal is choppy. To determine choppiness, we do that by taking the last cycle of the DS within the signal and we apply it to price. That means, for the sell signal here, we will take the high, low, high of the DS and we will apply that to price. For this exercise, we're not restricted to using just the corresponding candles of the signal. We can use the noise candles if they occur, if they add to the volatility of the signal. So we can take the highest high in price and measure down to the lowest low in the middle of the signal, and our objective is to get more than 2 points of volatility on either the back side or the front side of the signal. So for any signal, we have 2 chances to pass the test for sufficient volatility. So now that we've identified our measurement highs for the low and high of the signal, let's find their values and see if this signal is choppy. This yellow line shows the lowest point in price that the signal reached. This yellow line shows the highest point in price that the signal reached. This is the trading range of this signal. Even though this candle is considered noise, we can use it for this exercise. Our bottom low reached a high of 1156.75. Our top high reached a high of 1158.25, giving us a difference of only 1.5 points. Since we needed volatility of more than 2 points, or at least 2.25 points in the E-mini S&P, this signal failed, and we should not take it. The only exception to this rule would be if the signal were going with a trend. That is the only time we can take a choppy signal. The other type of signal that we may have is the elbow signal, and we measure choppiness for an elbow a little differently. Let's go over that right now. Here's a chart showing an elbow signal, identified by the black arrow. Here's another elbow on the DS. Now let's measure the first signal for choppiness. As usual, we start with the first DS low of the signal. The black arrow here shows our first low in price for the signal. Here's our corresponding MACD low. Now we put our crosshair tool at the elbow confirmation point of the DS. Whenever we identify the elbow confirmation point and place our vertical crosshair at that point, our corresponding candle to the elbow will either be right on or 1 minute before our elbow confirmation point. We never go back more than 1 minute to find our corresponding candle to the elbow confirmation point. Our corresponding candle to the DS elbow is directly below it, and we can consider this to be our zero candle as well as our corresponding candle. So far, we've identified the two price lows of this signal. Of course, between any two lows in price, there must be a high, and we can usually identify that high by simply finding the highest candle between our two corresponding candle lows. So our price high will be this tall red candle at the tip of our blue arrow. When we measure from price low to the price high on the back side of this signal, we find that it is only 1 point. The low was 898.75 and the price high was 899.75. Because the back side failed, we measure the front side of the signal, and it too is only 1 point of volatility. If the back side had passed, we would not need to measure the front side. Only one side of a signal going more than 2 points is required to pass the test for volatility. Now let's check our signal on the right for choppiness. We place our crosshair on the elbow confirmation point, and that identifies our corresponding candle to the elbow as well as our second price high. Our previous price high was found one candle back from the previous DS high. That's the red candle at 1206. We measure from the high of the 1206 red candle down to the low of the middle low in price. Since the high was 900 and the middle low in price was 899.25, we get a volatility range of only 3/4 of a point. We measure the front side of the signal, hoping for better results, but that too only produces a 3/4 point range. So for this signal, both the front side and the back side fail in reaching the required 2.25 points of volatility. So this, as with our first signal, we do not enter. This chart shows an example of extended choppy market condition in price. Notice how congested and anemic it looks between the two vertical yellow lines. Any buy or sell signal occurring during this time period will just not have enough volatility to be takeable. Here's another chart example of a choppy market. We've drawn two yellow lines showing the total trading range of the market during this choppy condition. Notice that it extends from a low of 898.25 to a high of 900.25, which is just 2 points and not sufficient volatility to take any signal, buy or sell, during this time period. Remember, we need more than 2 points of volatility for the signal to not be choppy. Learn to recognize choppy market condition, because taking these kinds of signals will nearly always lose. Also, be aware that the 2.25 figure is a guideline. When trading, you may come across a congested market where the candles stack sideways like a picket fence, and possibly when you measure the price range between the lows and the highs, you might get more than 2.25 points. But the signal would still be considered choppy because it would be difficult to enter a trade in congestion and not get stopped out. Choppy signals occur every day, and you must be ever vigilant so that you don't take a choppy signal by mistake. Of all choppy signals, the one least likely to work is a choppy elbow. Well, this concludes section 18 of our training. If any part of this section was not totally clear, then we suggest that you review this section again. And if any questions remain, please write them down, and we'll go over those questions in the online portion of your training. If you thoroughly understood this section, then you can proceed to section 19.